concentrated in the New York, New Jersey area. Obviously, Buffalo well represented, in Albany as well with Siena. But these two teams right across the river from one another, as New Rochelle, New York and Jersey City, New Jersey meet each other for a trip to the NCAA tournament. A bunch of players that have played AAU in camps in high school against one another. And St. Peter's and Iona show up at the MAAC championship game and find out they're on the same hotel floor. Not in the same hotel. The two teams are staying on the same floor as one another. So St. Peter's yesterday beats Fairfield. They're in the title game. They go back to their hotel. And they're in their room celebrating. All of a sudden, a couple hours later, who's knocking on the door? Their floor mates from Iona saying, "We've got you tomorrow in the championship game." And a party broke out between the two teams on the same floor of the hotel.
Well, I expect a game to break out between these two teams tonight. Again, we talked about the contrast in styles. In two tournament games, Iona has averaged 89 points. And the flip side, St. Peter's has allowed just 54 points in two tournament games.
A foul call on the loose ball underneath against Iona. John Dunn in his 5th year as the head coach at St. Peter's. This is the first Division I head coaching job he's had, but he was an assistant to Lewis Orr at Seton Hall for 5 years prior to coming to St. Peter's, and that Seton Hall team went to a couple of NCAA tournaments and had as much success as Seton Hall has had of late when Lewis Orr was the head coach there and Dunn was on his staff.
And Bob, we've seen Iona right now kind of employ some three-quarter court pressure, looking to speed the game up. You know, Tim Close told us that essentially they might give up a few easy baskets in order to speed this game up, but this is the tempo they want to play up and down, as we mentioned.
Tim Lewis did the old-fashioned way. Not only was the head coach at CW Post for 4 years before taking over at Iona, he was a high school coach on Long Island for 14 years at St. Mary's in Manhasset. So his New York roots certainly run deep. Nick Leon rises up, can't hit, and we are still scoreless through the first minute and a half. Machado with the lob, and it's put home inside by Mike Glover.
Well, we might see that more than once in this particular game. Again, good communication between the two guys. Sometimes it's not even verbal. It's just eye contact and recognizing the opening. And Glover with the athleticism, he can go get it as high as you throw it.
Shot clock down to 8. Samuels looks to penetrate, finds a lane, shovels it underneath, then a dunk. Ryan Bacon able to knock the game as both teams with a two-handed throw down to start.
And that was a good illustration of how St. Peter's wants to play. They'll get that ball, the shot under 10 seconds, but they'll be patient enough to find a good one.
Leon from the corner. Got it.
Now, if that's working, transition for St. Peter's, Iona might be in for a long night. Iona likes to run screens and rolls. They like to run curls for Kyle Smythe, their deadly three-point shooter. And we take a look again. Mike Glover just gets behind the defense and a perfect lob by Machado. And here, the shot clock running down, penetration, and finding a high percentage shooter. So both of these teams right now are playing their game.
Foul was called on Wesley Jenkins a moment ago. And already Mike Glover's got 4 for Iona. Shot clock under 10 again for St. Peter's.
Yeah, it's a 2-3 matchup, and right now you got to go. You got to get some kind of penetration, get a good shot.
Samuels with 2 to shoot. Doesn't realize it, and now it's a shot clock violation.
Now here's my problem on the other end. You know, John Dunn is standing up and telling him the shot clock's running down, but the team has to stand up to catch the attention of the teammates.
John Dunn was a backcourt mate at Archbishop Malloy with Kenny Anderson. They played together for the legendary high school coach Jack Curran. And a foul call on Glover. Glover slid underneath Darius Conley, and he picks up his first.
Now Glover can make the argument he's just laying there, but nevertheless it's a trip, and that's automatic. Take a look at the scramble for the loose ball, and he's there, and that's an automatic call by the official.
Nice. High-low pass to Conley. His dunk hit the underside of the rim. It's a fresh shot clock for St. Peter's. Conley tells his teammates, I've got it. All is well. But he couldn't quite elevate enough to get two.
But you didn't get it. but the attack was pretty good. Again, in the short corner. The two soft spots with his 2-3 below the free throw line. And in that short corner, it looked like a trout.
Conley simply lost it on the way up. 3 turnovers to start for Iona. A couple of turnovers for St. Peter's. Maybe some early nerves in the MAAC championship game here in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Every season starts at Dick's. And in part by Chrysler, imported from Detroit. And Bud Light. It's the sure sign of a good time. Here we go.
Championship week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods continuing. It's the MAAC championship game between St. Peter's and Iona. St. Peter's in Jersey City, Iona in New Rochelle. The Gales have now won 10 consecutive MAAC games coming into tonight. The Peacocks, it's funny, they were in, for my brief ESPN career, the most talked about college basketball game I may have done. And that was last year, our college basketball marathon. They hosted Monmouth, Glen Elmore, in the 6 a.m. game at the Yanatelli Center. 6 o'clock in the morning. We tossed it up. Exactly. You would not have been alone on the crew with that sentiment. White, a fadeaway from the free throw line. And that was a brick.
Say both teams may be feeling the jitters a little bit. We played less than 5 minutes, and we've already got 5 turnovers. 3 for Iona, 2 for St. Peter's, and some shots that haven't been close. And others that have been easy that have been missed.
Wide open pick and roll jump from Darius Conley. Missed everything as we take a look at the resume put together by St. Peter's. This is the 7th time they've appeared in the MAAC title game, but they've only won 2 previous titles and have not been in the NCAA tournament since 1995. So John Dunn trying to get them back to college basketball's ultimate event, and they are one step away. And I think, Len, you as a player played in a program where you knew you were going to the NCAA tournament, regardless of what happened for the most part down the stretch. I mean, at Maryland, you're going to play in postseason basketball. We understand that. But for these programs, this is the ultimate one-bid league. This is Game 7. How much do you think those jitters do play a part?
Oh, I know what these jitters are about. I mean, not to correct you, but back in my day, the ACC was a one-bid conference. And you had to win the tournament in order to get there. This is what college basketball is about. It's one and done. And I understand that. We were the number 4 team in the country in 1974 playing the number 1 team, NC State, for the right to go to the NCAA tournament. Now imagine that. And only one of us went, and it wasn't us. But I couldn't imagine in a 32-team field, there were not 28 teams better than we were. But unfortunately, they changed that rule because they saw the absurdity of it the year after, and it's expanded the field and more at-large teams. We certainly would have gone that year. But I know exactly how these teams feel right now. This is it.
Boy, Machado with a great crossover to get to the goal. And there is a lid on the basket for both teams right now as he couldn't hit the layup.
Yeah, now the difference was that in that particular game, we scored 100 points. NC State scored 103. So there weren't too many jitters there. It was just a battle of putting the ball in the basket and playing pretty solid defense, believe it or not, even despite the score.
Deron Beelan, strong drive. Beelan with double figures against Loyola and Fairfield in the quarters and semis here at the MAAC tournament.
Well, he's St. Peter's leading scorer in this tournament, averaging about 16 points. And you can see he's a terrific slasher going to the basket. And look how tightly Kyle Smythe is being played. St. Peter's does not want him to get any airspace to be able to launch the threes because he's a guy that can bust games open.
Machado spins into a double team, still finds Rodriguez, and he's fouled. So Alejo Rodriguez will go to the free throw line. Foul called on Beelan, his first.
Well, the thing about this is Beelan needed to stay on his feet because Bacon was coming over to help. Yeah, take a look right here. St. Peter's averages about 5 blocks per game. So they've got some erasers out there in the event that you make a mistake defensively, but the defensive player on the ball has to have some patience and wait for his help. That's one way to make them.
Yikes. Well, Tim Cluse has his team on the verge potentially of the 8th title in MAAC history for Iona. And I'm not sure if the pregame free throw shooting clinic was aim at the box and throw it as hard as you can, but Rodriguez, 1 of 2, using that system, and now a travel at the other end. 4th turnover as Beelan jump stop in the lane. So St. Peter's has the lead, but it's been sloppy early. Already 7 turnovers. We have yet to play 7 minutes.
And I think what's happening right now is Iona, even though they haven't been as efficient as they have been on the season in scoring, they're starting to impose their will. St. Peter's taking some quick shots. We've seen them run the shot clock down below 10. But when they take those bad shots, it's usually because it's a quick shot.
Machado backs it out with 8 to shoot. Triple teamed in the corner and lost it out of bounds.
Yeah, the St. Peter's goal with Machado is to keep him out of the paint because he creates havoc.
Beelan from the corner. He's got a 3.
That's nice penetration there. And the kick to the wide open shooter in the corner. And again, if St. Peter's can play at that pace and get good shots, they're in good shape. But this is Iona's kind of basketball game. Whether or not they prevail remains to be seen. But they've got St. Peter's playing their game for the most part.
Rashawn Dwight was 5 of 7 from three-point land. 19 points against Ryder. He hits his first 3. Beelan's got another.
I think it's time to recognize that Beelan's got a hot hand. You got to play tag with him a little bit to cool him down.
Jenkins tries a triple. Alejo Rodriguez kept it alive for a moment. Bacon with the save.
Nice little tightrope act.
Another 3 on the way. McLeon can't hit.
That's a perfect example. Quick shot, bad shot. Move the ball, penetrate, you get wide open shooters.
Rashawn Dwight just about had a chance for a 3-point play. He'll go to the free throw line.
Well, you take a look at the space that Beelan's been given. And, of course, he's letting everybody know he's got the range right now.
Steven Samuels called for his first personal foul. You've got the best team, at least statistically speaking, offensively in Iona. They average just under 80 points a game. You've got the best defensive team in St. Peter's. Second fewest points allowed, number 1 opponent field goal percentage, number 1 opponent's 3-point percentage. If you were coaching in a championship game, which team, generally speaking, would you rather coach? Would you like to coach the great offensive team or the great defensive team?
Personally, I'd coach the great defensive team. Certainly you want guys to be able to put the ball in the basket, but if the game is close down the stretch, you got to find ways to stop your opponent before you can actually find a way to score. And that's what I'd always appreciate. You know, the adage, defense wins championships. Well, it's true for the most part.
Blocking foul call. Wesley Jenkins will shoot free throws when we come back. And also when we come back, we'll take a look at a silver anniversary moment in the MAAC. And if you're a Dick Vitale fan, this is worth sticking around for. You want to step into the time capsule with us? We'll take a look when we return. Welcome back to the MAAC championship game here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. In 1986, the MAAC championship game was also on ESPN. Fairfield played Holy Cross, and Dick Vitale apparently spent quality time with a Coke bottle before the game. This is worth a peek back in the time capsule.
ESPN presents college basketball. Tonight, the Metro Atlantic Championship from the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Metro Atlantic action, Fred White and Dick Vitale standing by this evening, and we'll get a few pregame thoughts.
Here tonight, Holding Cross knows they have to win to go. Fairfield, maybe they have to win to go too.
Fred, I really believe they must win. Just think about last year with West Virginia. In fact, there were a number of teams that won 20 games last year and did not get into the big dance.
Dick Vitale setting a prescription record, I think, with that set of glasses. Mitch Onaguro and George Blaney, the coaches. Tony George and A.J. Winder squared off. Those two played extraordinarily well. Fairfield beat Holy Cross 67-64 in the 1986 MAAC championship game, a game we had for you here on ESPN. The scary part is that this entire student section was just a dream when that game was played.
That's right, a gleam in somebody's eye. But how about Dick? Somebody must have been tying his hands behind his back. He was the most subdued that I've ever seen him. Bob Lee hasn't changed though.
Yeah, Bob Lee has the Dick Clark thing going on. There's no doubt. He just doesn't age. Wesley Jenkins at the free throw line, averaging just under 13 a game, a 74% free throw shooter. And he puts St. Peter's on top by 4. The winner goes to the NCAA tournament.
See a little pressure right there. This is St. Peter's attempt to control tempo. Slow Iona down, fearful of the transition game and even the secondary kind of transition game that Iona employs.
Shot clock down to 7. On the way, a 3 from Dwight. That comes up way short. Belcher tried to keep it alive underneath. Instead, it's taken away by Yvonne Raymond.
I don't know if it was timely or not, but St. Peter's goes to zone with Machado out of the game, recognizing that the penetration capability of Iona is limited without him.
Phelan pulls up for 2. Couldn't hear the whistle in the corner. Apparently, it looked as if Kyle Smythe may have been on the end line when he touched the basketball. So it stays with St. Peter's. No foul call, but Smythe was touching the baseline.
And Iona sticking with the game plan. We remarked on the last 3 that Phelan made that he's got the hot hand, but he's only a 24% shooter from beyond the arc.
Jenkins spun. The ball bounces back out to Conley. Leon left alone. He's got it.
Nice job just utilizing a screen, one dribble pull-up against the 2-3 zone. Normally, I'm not a fan of screening the top guys of the zone because the other guys, if they're active enough on the wing, they'll come up and cover. But no one there, and Leon takes advantage.
Shot clock under 10 once again. Jermel Jenkins turns the corner. Phelan got his hand in and knocked it out of bounds with 4 on the shot clock as Scott Machado set to come back on at point guard for Iona. And the Big East Championship presented by American Eagle Outfitters set to get underway. 4 games tomorrow. UConn and DePaul will kick things off at noon. And there'll be a couple of other games at Madison Square Garden before we wrap things up on the weekend. That's the traffic. Between now and Thursday, we'll play 12 games at the Big East Championship.
That's just like New York traffic, man. It'll be the same as 7th Avenue. Just crowded, people jockeying for position.
Offensive foul call. Conley will be called for a sliding screen left of the lane.
All right, here, going back to your point, Bob, about which team I'd rather have. Right now, St. Peter's offense is kind of bogged down, but their defense is good enough to stop Iona on several trips. And so they haven't really lost much. And that's what you have to do. Defense has to be consistent because your offense will go south at some part of the game.
A long 2 and a nice job using the ball fake by Sean Armand to knock it down.
And it was a nice job getting the ball to him. We talked about Iona, almost 18 assists per game. They pop the ball around. They get people when they're open.
Iona now has 11 field goal attempts in the game. But to your point, Len, 5 of those 11 have come from three-point land. Conley left alone, and he knocks it down. The St. Peter's defense, though, is not allowing Iona to penetrate the way they're normally able.
And again, they try to push the ball up the floor. And except for that pass in the Glover from Machado, they thought that they had him stopped. They had 3 guys back in the paint. But once again, credit Machado for finding the passing lane.
Raymond splits the defense. Yvonne Raymond caught in the lane. Finds Beelan. His flip won't go, and Pelcher with the rebound.
And again, a good job by St. Peter's to get back, but it's the secondary break they have to be careful of. Glover got a nice look from the free throw line.
Mike Glover, the younger brother of Anthony Glover, the former St. John star. That was his first field goal miss. He's now 3 for 4 from the field. These two teams met during the regular season twice, and Iona won both and won both convincingly. So this has to be a confidence boost start for St. Peter's as Raymond drives it and scores. Beautiful finger roll from Yvonne Raymond. Back on January 7th, Iona won at home 70-52 against St. Peter's. Then on February 25th, they went to St. Peter's and won 73-59. So 2 pretty solid double-digit wins during the regular season for the Gale.
And when you look at the number of points that were scored, you can tell St. Peter's wasn't on their game.
Machado, nice find to Pelcher, and he banks it home.
We talked about Scott Machado. I remember him as a freshman when Iona went down to the Old Spice Classic in Orlando a couple years ago. And he was touted as a scorer with that kind of potential to put points on the board. But Tim Cluse told us when he took over, he looked at tape, saw sometimes Machado would take bad shots and other guys were open, and he convinced Machado to be more of a playmaker. And boy, that's paid dividends, averaging almost 8 assists per game.
Rashawn Dwight pushes to Machado. Too strong. Glover keeps it alive. Eventually Yvonne Raymond has it. Tied up by Dwight, but Raymond rips it away.
That was one of the few times Iona's gotten from St. Peter's and had an opportunity for fast break off of a miss. But all in all, St. Peter's a nice job of getting back on defense and deterring the fast break.
Shot clock down to 6. Leon bounces it through a double team to Beelan. Swoops in with the left hand. Pelcher taps it back out to Machado. Armand for 3. And a long rebound to Leon. It's like a hockey game. We've got 3 players at midcourt set to jump over the boards. And we play continuous action. No whistles.
3 guys back. St. Peter's only sending 2 guys to the offensive glass. And that's what's thwarting the opportunity to get high percentage shots off the fast break for Iona.
Shot clock under 10 for Leon. He launches a 3, and it bottoms out. Nick Leon with a triple, and that stretches the St. Peter's lead to 7. Leon has 7. It's the largest lead for St. Peter's. Tim Cluse wants to talk things over. Iona off to a sluggish start, and we'll step aside for 30 seconds and come right back to the MAAC championship game. Championship week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. St. Peter's with the early 23-16 lead over Iona. Nick Leon on the bench, but he has been hot at the start. 7 points. He only averages about 10.5 points per game. And St. Peter's off to a somewhat surprising 23-16 lead. What would you look for out of the timeout here if you're Tim Cluse?
It's got to be getting Machado in the paint, be able to create some stuff. That time he takes the shot. But they needed to get some easy baskets. They tried to run kind of a weave outside to try to get some movement. But it comes down to breaking down that St. Peter's defense, which Iona has been able to do very few times.
Machado is now 0 for 5 from the field. Samuels. Nice move with the right hand, but lost it on the way to the goal. Thielen pulls up, rattles out, and Glover the rebound. Machado penetrates again. Ball movement in the corner to Dwight. A long rebound with contact. Ends up with Thielen. He swoops in. He can't score.
After
Dwight.
After knocking down a couple of threes now, I think Thielen is fashioning himself as, being an outstanding scorer. He's got to utilize better judgment.
And Yvonne Raymond committed the foul. It's been hot shooting from the forwards, especially with St. Peter's on top by 7. All right, Cindy, thanks very much. Championship Week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods, continuing here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The championship game of the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. The other MAAC championship game will be Saturday night in Cleveland. We'll have that for you on ESPN as well. But tonight, it's either St. Peter's or Iona. That will be in the NCAA tournament.
Right now, St. Peter's, again, with the changing defenses, trying to put a crimp into the Iona style, which is up-tempo basketball, as Iona still is struggling with their half-court shot clock around 5 right now. That's not what they're accustomed to.
Armand with a runner. The freshman can't hit. Tapped around. Dwight had his hands on it. It's out of bounds off St. Peter's. Went off the legs of Wesley Jenkins, or check that, Stephen Samuels, and out of bounds. So Iona has the basketball when we come back. 3.5 minutes to go here in the first half in Bridgeport. All right, Cindy, thanks very much. Championship Week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods, continuing at the MAAC Championship game. Bob Wischusen and Len Elmore, and Len takes us inside the play.
Well, very fearful of the Iona transition. John Dunn has instructed his guys just to send 2 players to the offensive glass, and you see them right there. 1, 2, and then the rest of the guys are heading back to get back on defense. And what that's done right now is kind of thwart Iona's ability to get fast break baskets. They're forced to take perimeter shots. And when you take a look at the numbers, it's working. No fast break points for Iona, and they average 79 points a game, and that's part of their game, a big part of their game.
St. Peter's is a mediocre rebounding team, generally speaking, at best as well. Is that just, from a strategic standpoint, giving up something, maybe offensive rebounds, that you wouldn't expect to get anyway, even if you sent more guys to the glass?
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, you go to the offensive glass if you're missing shots. You kind of hope that you can keep it alive. You never want to give up those types of opportunities unless there's a bigger picture in mind. And right now, the bigger picture is prevailing because, as I mentioned, Iona has no fast break points.
Good hands by Wesley Jenkins. He was, after he created the turnover, lost it in the front court, but it's knocked out of bounds off Iona, so it will stay with St. Peter's. And we have an injured player. Kyle Smythe is down on the floor, and it looks like he's holding the shoulder that he may have injured yesterday. And it is. It's the exact same injury that he suffered yesterday in the win against Ryder.
Wow.
Smythe came to the shoot-around earlier today with that left shoulder ace bandaged with an ice pack on it as Iona came in the gym. Now, they eventually took the ace bandage off, and he participated in shoot-around and obviously felt good enough to go tonight. This is the second time that he's been in the game.
But actually, he hasn't really been involved in the offense. He was more of a decoy out there.
And yesterday afternoon, here's how he injured that left shoulder against Ryder. On the fast break, and on that slap takeaway, it looked like his hand was still kind of connected to the basketball, and he extended his shoulder. He was only 1 for 6 from three-point land yesterday against Ryder with the injured shoulder, and normally he shoots over 40% as a three-point shooter. There are only 3 players for Iona that average double figures, and Kyle Smythe is one of them. And now he's back in the locker room. Beelan comes up to set the screen for Leon with 10 to shoot. Jenkins now has it, 5 on the shot clock. Wesley Jenkins way short. Ryan Bacon, though, finds the loose ball. And it did graze the rim, so a fresh shot clock for St. Peter's.
And again, offensive rebounding, as I said, you don't want to default them and just say, okay, here. When you have an opportunity to get some extra opportunities, you want to go get them. And even if you send 2.
Interception by Alejo Rodriguez. Machado, though, has to kick it back outside to Glover.
It didn't have a lot of comfort in that drive as St. Peter's once again gets their numbers back. Just an excellent job St. Peter's does in covering shooters. You know, pass is made at the guy in front of him, but Machado goes back to his scorer's mentality.
Strong move on the baseline for the All-MAAC first team point guard. First points in over 5.5 minutes for Iona.
And you credit that to the St. Peter's defense, as I mentioned. Jump shots are being challenged. Drives have been taken away.
Leon with a little floater. Rashawn Dwight with the rebound.
And again, with Kyle Smythe out of the game right now for Iona, even though he seemed to be more of a decoy in this game because I suspect he was still injured, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of St. Peter's, and they're even more aggressive and challenging shooting.
Machado up, under, and in. Beautiful ball fake. Back-to-back buckets by Scott Machado makes it a one-possession game.
And how about the adjustment right there? Machado now, they lost Kyle Smythe. Machado's taken over a lot of the scoring burden, even though he is the second leading scorer.
Third 3 of the first half for Jerron Beelan. He's got 11.
And he's a 24% three-point shooter coming into this game. That's what I love about this stuff. You rise to the challenge in a one-and-done situation.
ESPN's the home court of championship week. Tuesday night on ESPN. Coverage continues with 2 more conference championship games. First at 7 Eastern, the Big East Women's Championship presented by American Eagle Outfitters. And then at 9 Eastern, we'll be in Milwaukee as Butler goes on the road to take on Milwaukee in the Horizon League Championship game. All part of Championship Week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods tomorrow night. And UConn on the women's side is comfortably in front as it looks like they are going to cement away their spot in the women's championship game in the Big East tomorrow night.
And how about Butler? Again, this is a huge game for them, obviously. They can't necessarily rely on the at-large bid because they've been in that revolving door, last 4 in, first 4 out on several occasions. They win this and get the automatic bid from the Horizon League. They're back in the tournament after being a finalist last year.
Armand gets trapped, shot clock at 4 as it is knocked out by Steven Samuels. Iona, so far this season, has never scored under 25 points and a half.
Well, we mentioned at the beginning of this telecast, you know, something had to give. It was the best offense versus the best defense in the MAAC. And right now, the best defense is prevailing.
Bacon did a good job to jump in the passing lane and knock it out. 3 on the shot clock now, and a tough spot for Rashawn Dwight to trigger in from in the corner. Jenkins kicks it. And because it's a kicked ball, that's going to set the shot clock up to 15. So now Iona can hold for 1.
Yeah, we talked about, again, the situation with St. Peter's being able to control tempo.
Armand didn't realize it. The freshman, Sean Armand, rose up as if the shot clock had not been reset. He thought the shot clock still had 3 seconds on it. Not understanding that the kick ball put it up to 15. And Iona catches a break as St. Peter's knocks it out of bounds.
That's why they have these big scoreboards with big red numbers on them. As a player, you got to look at it. He was bailed out right there.
All of the upperclassmen came over to the freshman after he wildly shot it and said, hey, that was a shot clock reset. Coming up short is Machado. Down to 3 seconds to go on the half. Leon, good if it goes. Just off the mark. Still in all, though, a tremendous defensive first half for the Peacocks of St. Peter's. Jerron Beelan, 3 for 3 from outside the arc. He led all scorers with 11 in the first half. And St. Peter's holds Iona to a season low in terms of scoring in a half by 5 points. St. Peter's in the MAAC championship game on top by 6. Cindy Brunson and Adrian Branch standing by in our studios now. It's the Cisco halftime report. Cindy?
As Iona would expect, when he does that, he creates a lot of havoc.
St. Peter's a 19-win team. Iona a 22-win team. Iona the number 2 seed. St. Peter's the number 4 seed. And right out of the gate, we saw that. The first basket of the game that Iona scored. The set play on the lob from Machado to Glover. And they do it to start the second half as well.
And you kind of thought that St. Peter's might expect that. No ball pressure, allowing an easy pass. That's only the 9th field goal for Iona. At the end of the half, they shot 35% from the field. They averaged 48% from the field. And 1 of 7 from beyond the arc when they averaged 37 on the season. But once again, take a look. No ball pressure and no body on Glover. And recognizing that that's the way they opened the game, St. Peter's probably should have been ready.
Leon for 3. Connects!
Good ball movement. Wide open look that didn't touch iron. And Leon 2 of 4 from beyond the arc. 10 points.
Machado gets tied up again. And they may have a foul call. Steven Samuels called for his second personal foul.
Take a look, just a little bit of penetration. 3 guys converge on the ball. And Jermel Jenkins just a little too late getting to Leon. But that last play, you see how much difficulty Machado is having getting into the paint. Every time he tries to go down the middle, you got 3 black shirts converging on him, making him kick.
At the other end as well, St. Peter's 35% as a team from three-point land, which was only 4th best in the MAAC, but they're 5 for 8 so far tonight. Jenkins drives, too strong. Offensive rebound though by Rodriguez, and rather than going right back up, kicks it back outside. Machado on a drive. He draws the foul. Boy, it seemed like Alejo Rodriguez had a room service putback, and instead he bounced it back outside.
You see the drive by Jenkins right there. It gets knocked out of his hands. I think he wanted to go back up.
You think? Didn't even look to me like he was looking to go back up.
Well, Nick Leon slapped it out of his hands, and that's what happened on that one.
Machado ends up at the free throw line.
And again, Machado, with the ability to penetrate, created something, got to the free throw line. Every once in a while, he'll get away from St. Peter's and gets an opportunity to do something. But for the most part, St. Peter's has done a nice job of bottling him up.
Machado already with 3 assists tonight. He averages 7.5 assists per game, number 2 in the country.
Like full court man pressure right there.
Leon can't get the roll this time. Kept alive though. Offensive rebound by Darius Conley.
Leon's got to be careful. Don't celebrate too soon, baby. He put his arms up like it was a 3 going down. And again, you see the patience for the most part by St. Peter's. Bad pass.
Conley couldn't handle it at first. Regathered and then missed the layup.
And how many layups has Conley missed tonight? He's had a lot of difficulty around the basket.
Machado into the paint. Again gets shut down. And ends up back on the perimeter.
See, right now we talked about imposing will. This is not what Iona wants. They want to be able to push the ball. They want a couple passes, wind up with a high percentage shot. But St. Peter's really getting in the passing lane, really getting in the driving lane, forcing Iona east-west instead of north-south.
With those long arms, Ryan Bacon with the steal that time. Leon, pick and roll with Bacon. Here comes Rashawn Dwight. Ahead to Machado. Can't lay it home. The tip follow rolls off. Glover with another try, and he'll track it down in the corner.
They maintained possession, but a missed opportunity by Iona. One of the few fast break opportunities they've been able to get. Still no fast break points for the highest scoring team in the MAAC.
Machado for three. Taking the rebound.
And from three is where they'd rather have Machado shoot than in the paint. He's just a 33% shooter from beyond the arc.
Iona as a team, 1 for 8 from three-point land in the game. Jenkins, pick and roll with Bacon. Weaves his way through traffic and scores. And the lead back up to 7. This matches St. Peter's largest lead. White spins inside. Looked like a pretty good pass that Alejo Rodriguez couldn't handle. 7th turnover for Iona.
Take a look right there. Ryan Bacon, a guy who's very adept off the screen and roll. Nice delivery there by Jenkins.
Welcome back to the MAAC championship game. 30th anniversary of the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, and a conference that has produced some great players, including Steve Burt Sr., A.J. Winder, who went on to play in the NBA for the Celtics. Lionel Simmons. LaSalle was in the MAAC when Lionel Simmons played for them, and he had an 8-year career with the Kings. Luis Flores played for Bobby Gonzalez at Manhattan, and 3 years in the NBA. And that pipeline from the MAAC to Sacramento continues with Jason Thompson, star for Ryder. And he plays for the Kings as well. There's Scott Machado's family. The C, by the way, is Luis Machado. That's his dad. And he's trying to get the stop going as his son's team being held down by St. Peter's here in the second half of the MAAC title game. Iona, number 1 in the conference in points per game, just under 80 a game. 15 times this year, Iona went over 80 in a game. And they've got 24 points in about 25 minutes. Bacon slips inside and scores. Largest lead for St. Peter.
What you like about that play, Nick Leon gets a good angle to pass it down the baseline. Not often you see guys get that angle.
And then the rush 3 at the other end for the freshman Sean Armand.
A 9-point lead by St. Peter's. Iona can't let the frustration turn into panic right now by taking bad shots and quick shots.
Dealing with a drop pass to nowhere. It's out of bounds, though, off for Rashawn Dwight. Saved nicely by Wesley Jenkins to keep it alive. 13 to shoot for St. Peter.
And Bob, going back to your question in the first half, would I rather have the defensive team or the offensive team? Here's a great example. You know, if I'm down like this, I want to have a consistently good defense so I can string together some stops and possibly get back into this ball game. Right now, Iona, no good is being done for them by just trading baskets.
Shot clock at 10. Jenkins in the corner. Shot clock down to 4. Does he realize it? Leon points it out. Jenkins throws up a wild one. It won't bank home. Bacon couldn't keep it alive, and here comes Machado. Shovels one off. And somehow squeezing it home is DeZouvre.
And that's Iona basketball. We've seen flashes of it, but no consistency. But they will run it down your throats given the opportunity. And St. Peter's hasn't given them much of an opportunity. I think those are the first 2 fast break points that Iona scored all game.
The drive by Beelan, and he scores again. Jerron Beelan continues his unconscious play here in the MAAC tournament.
But as I said, you can't trade baskets. If you're Iona, St. Peter's, the longer they keep this lead, the more confident they become.
Machado to the corner. Dwight for 3. He's got it. All of a sudden, Iona starts to heat back up. Timeout call. John Dunn saw that Steven Samuels was in trouble and called timeout from the bench.
Called timeout just as the clock hit 25. Didn't have a chance to push it over. But nice job right here. Iona starting to get it loose now. Starting to knock down some shots.
Welcome back to Bridgeport. Championship week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Bob Wischusen alongside Len Elmore. It's the MAAC title game, and Len takes us inside the play.
Well, earlier in the first half, we talked about St. Peter's having success sending just two guys to the offensive glass and stopping the break. But now you have all of these black shirts caught there in what is now the backcourt. And Iona, with the rebound after a solid defensive effort, gets the opportunity to go to the basket. And all it takes is one extra step, as St. Peter's didn't have enough numbers in that front court to cover the offensive onslaught by Iona. And you take a look at the assists right now. You know, the Gales third in the nation with almost 18 assists per game. That's only their fifth for the game. So St. Peter's has done a nice job in forcing Iona to go one-on-one and playing good D.
Thielen lost the dribble, gives Dwight a fast break opportunity. He goes against a double team, though, and Ryan Bacon forced him to alter his shot.
Yeah, the best course of action there for Dwight was to push the ball up, kick it to one of the wing guys if he's going to get it back. Force the defense to shift and maybe rotate, then find the opening.
Shot clock down to 8. Nick Leon, one-on-one. Shot clock at 3, gives it up. Samuels on the drive, flips it up and in, but an offensive foul. Steven Samuels called for the charge. That's his third. DeZoubre stepped in and took the charge.
And here's where fundamentals come in handy. That should have been a pull-up jump shot. 2 dribbles, pull up instead of the leaners. Guys get themselves in so much trouble driving to the basket and leaning when the defense is set. If you can put it on the floor, 1 or 2 dribbles, then elevate, you got a much better chance of getting a decent shot and avoiding the offensive foul.
No matter which team wins tonight, it would be the first trip to the NCAA tournament for any of these players. As again, the freshman from the corner, Sean Armand, can't hit from 3, but there to follow is Glover.
Well, Glover now recognizes he's got to be anchored under the basket to put back the errant shots.
Bacon, deep position, and the jump hook is perfect. A whistle blows just after Bacon makes the basket. And Mike Kitt's going to go over to the scorer's table.
I think there was a little dust-up between a St. Peter's player and Iona's player.
And now Mike Kitt's going to put on the headset, communicate with our truck, and take a look at something on the replay monitor. And they're going to take a look and see if an elbow was indeed thrown, and then where on the scale that elbow would fall, either somewhere between incidental contact and no call, all the way up to possibly a flagrant foul.
Well, see, that's right here. Yeah, it's Machado and Jenkins. Wesley Jenkins for St. Peter's, Scott Machado.
And Mike Kitts let the play out. As Bacon made the basket, he then immediately whistled and said, let's go to the monitor and review. No foul was called, even though it happened right in front of Mike Kitts, but now he's going to make sure. Well, you got to look. Did that look like incidental contact, no call to you, or do you think that there might be some type of penalty imposed here?
Well, just like Mike Kitts, I'd have to see it again. Here we go.
And through the magic of television, we hook you up.
No, I don't think that. It could have been a foul. Could have been a foul on Jenkins, but it certainly was not an elbow.
And they will call it incidental contact.
But, you know, I give Mike Kitts credit for checking.
White in amongst the trees, tried to find Glover. And it's taken away and saved underneath. Nice job by Yvonne Raymond to turn it over for St. Peter's.
Dangerous, but nice job. Saving the ball under the other guy's basket is always a risk.
Brandon Hall just about turned it over. Leon tries to bail him out. Scramble for it. It's a held ball, and it stays with the Peacocks. 8 seconds on the shot clock. And we have a timeout on the floor. 11:09 to go in the second half of the MAAC championship game. Either St. Peter's or Iona is going to the tournament. All right, Cindy, thank you very much. It's championship week presented by Dick's Sporting Goods, continuing here at the MAAC title game between St. Peter's and Iona. Iona hasn't been to the NCAA tournament since the 2005-2006 season. That's the last time they won the MAAC. And St. Peter's hasn't won the conference since 1995. So there are no players in this game that have ever played in the NCAA tournament before. And Leon couldn't get a shot off to beat the shot clock, stripped away.
Iona now getting a little more serious, a little more intense on the defensive end as they try to close this gap.
Machado steps into a three. Long rebound to Jenkins. White tries a triple. That's too strong.
And Mike Glover goes in that possession without even touching the ball, which is, a problem for Iona. He's got to touch it because even if he doesn't score, if he gets doubled, it creates a defensive change and rotation, which opens it up for others. Instead, Iona just content trying to shoot the ball from the perimeter with no success.
Thielen leans in and out. Jenkins tried to spin inside. Taken away instead by Brandon Hall. Hall lost the dribble. Somehow got it to Leon. And Leon clears it back outside to Thielen and settles things down.
Well, you remember the adage made famous by John Wooden, be quick but not in a hurry. That needs to be reemphasized for both of these teams right now in their execution. They're hurrying instead of taking their time and making quick moves. That's why they can't grab the handle.
Leon from way outside. Here comes Rashawn Dwight.
Yeah, John Dunn can't be happy with that shot.
Machado with the lob to Glover. That's the third time those two have hooked up for an alley-oop tonight.
John Dunn couldn't be happy with the shot by Hall and certainly not with the defense in losing Mike Glover. And how do you lose Glover? The team's leading scorer, all-conference player, and he just gets behind the defense once again. Couldn't happen at a better time for Iona. And it's essentially starting to take the wind out of the St. Peter's effort.
6 assists now for Machado. If you like Big East basketball, by the way, we have a couple of games for you this week. ESPN, the home court of championship week, and tomorrow it continues with a full day of first-round action of the Big East Championship presented by American Eagle Outfitters starting at noon Eastern on ESPN2 HD. We've got the day session covered. Then at 7 Eastern, ESPNU HD brings you the night sessions. The ESPN networks will bring you every game of the Big East Championship, part of Championship Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. And St. John's has helped revive college basketball a little bit in the New York metropolitan area. Steve Lavin certainly has to be at least considered for Big East Coach of the Year with what he's done with the Johnnies this year.
Oh, it's no question about it. St. John's is the headliner in college basketball in New York, but you saw a number of teams here that have had outstanding success this year, and I think it's Steve Lavin or Mike Bray, one of the two of the Big East Coach of the Year.
Thielen unintentionally behind his back to Yvonne Raymond. He tried to dribble it behind his back, and it turned into a perfect behind-the-back pass.
You see on the screen and roll right there, St. Peter's very good at stepping out. That time, Jenkins a little bit too late, but he makes up for it with a nice block.
Ryan Bacon might have gotten a piece of it as well. Here's Leon for three. Knocks knocks it down.
Iona getting a little bit of their own medicine from St. Peter's. Who again, you thought after the lob, it might have taken some wind out of their sails, but they come back with an intensity on both ends of the floor to push this lead back out to 9.
That matches the largest lead for St. Peter's, and Tim Klus calls a timeout after he sees his team give it up in transition. The behind-the-back dribble, though, he meant to pass it, right?
Hey, as long as it winds up being a bucket. But they're in transition. Again, St. Peter's, even though they like the moderate tempo, not afraid to take the open looks. Nick Leon doing a nice job just finding open spots.
Well, Nick Leon, a senior. Wesley Jenkins, a senior. Ryan Bacon, a senior. For St. Peter's, it's a school, obviously, that does have some pedigree here in the conference. It's the 7th time they've been in a championship game, but you can see they haven't won the title since 1995. And this senior class with Leon and Jenkins and Bacon at the core of it, this group, according to John Dunn, came when the cupboard was bare. They were a 5-win program before these 3 players signed as a recruiting class for Dunn 4 years ago. So talking to him at the shoot-around, he said that he really can't express how happy he is that these 3 players specifically are getting a chance to now perform on this stage, because they kind of took it upon themselves to come to St. Peter's when the cupboard was bare and resurrect the program, and they've done that.
Not only did they come, but after that 6-win first season, they had a lot of people whispering in their ear about transferring. This is not the program for you, but they stuck it out. And now this is what they've dreamed of, playing for that opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament.
Oubre tries to force it inside, broken up by Bacon. And then a foul call. A foul will go against Rashawn Dwight. And that foul might have almost been a break for Iona, as Jerron Beelan was off to the races.
Well, offensively, Iona not getting good spacing, and that plays right into the hands of an aggressive defense. Trying to get the ball ultimately to Mike Glover, but with bad spacing allows one guy to play 2 guys to play 3.
It's the 102nd meeting between these 2 teams. Both meetings this season were pretty much dominated by Iona. They won by double figures at home. They won by double figures at St. Peter's. Here's Jenkins. He's got a 3. And now St. Peter's is up by double figures in the championship game. Machado forces it. A foul will be called on Brandon Hall, I believe.
I think that could have gone either way. Fortunate for Iona, because Machado lowered his shoulder and pushed.
It's an 8-0 run for St. Peter's. Their largest lead. It's up to 12 with under 8 minutes to go. All right, Cindy, thanks very much. A couple of surprise stories, maybe in college basketball. Pat Knight let go, and Jawan Johnson, the Big Ten Player of the Year, Len Elmore.
Well, I think the Jawan Johnson story is huge, because all year we've been talking about the freshman, Jared Sullinger, and Johnson's exploits have gone relatively unnoticed, except by the folks who voted for him, and congratulations. The senior absolutely deserves it.
Machado, tough shot in the lane. It won't go, but a foul is called.
And Bob, when you look at this game, you're looking for barometers and metrics to figure out, okay, why is St. Peter's winning this game? And we can talk a lot about defense, but when you take a look, you play 3 tournament games on 3 consecutive days. You're going to have tired legs. Coaches are going to have to manage their bench and get people in. And I'll tell you what, you take a look at this number, St. Peter's bench has outscored Iona's bench 17-6. So they're getting more production out of their bench players, and that means that you can rest guys and you can have fresh guys on the floor. Now, granted, they're going primarily rest in Jerron Beelan with 13 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 3 from beyond the arc, but that's still significant.
Nick Leon just came back for St. Peter's. Machado, 1 of 2 at the line. The foul called on Yvonne Raymond, by the way. That was his 3rd. Full court pressure now by Iona, and Leon has to spend a timeout. couldn't get in the backcourt. So St. Peter's is down to 1 timeout remaining with 7.5 minutes to go. Let's take a look now at our Chasing the Dream feature, part of our championship coverage presented by Principal Financial. And the key tonight for Chasing the Dream for St. Peter's has been stopping Scott Machado.
Yeah, if they want to realize their dream of getting to the NCAA tournament, they recognize that this is one guy they have to bottle up. And every time Machado makes a move towards the basket, you see 2 or 3 guys around him, forcing him to give up the ball, forcing him into turnovers.
Scott Machado went to St. Benedict's in New Jersey for prep school. Ryan Bacon of St. Peter's went to St. Benedict's. Wesley Jenkins of St. Peter's went to Bloomfield Tech. And Rashawn Dwight of Iona went to Bloomfield Tech. So not only do you have former high school teammates playing against each other tonight, but all of these players know each other from the AAU circuit, from camps, just being in the New York metropolitan area. And we told you at the start, these 2 schools shared the same floor at the hotel that was set up just down the road here in Bridgeport for the MAAC championship. So not just 2 teams in the same hotel, the players are all on the same floor of the same hotel. So that created a couple of interesting scenes over the past 2 days as they both won their semifinal games. Beelan inside, he's able to score.
I wonder if they got together and kind of simulated this game on video game.
Well, the first semifinal yesterday, St. Peter's beat Fairfield. So all the players are back in their hotel rooms when they're done, as Iona is able to take out Ryder. So the Iona players go back to the same floor that the St. Peter's players are on and start banging on the Peacock players' doors, saying, guess who you've got tomorrow in the championship game? And a little party took place in the hallway.
We take a look right there, just fundamentally sound. Off the back screen, Beelan gave it up on the wing, took the back screen, little flex cut, and ultimately wound up with the layup. And again, St. Peter's executing very well at their tempo, at their pace. You know, they're able to run their stuff. Iona kind of interrupted them a little bit with a mini run. But right now, 13-point lead. St. Peter's can smell it. 6 minutes and approximately 35 seconds left.
The pump fake inside, and Mike Glover scores, plus the foul. So a chance for a 3-point play for Mike Glover. He'll try and make it a 10-point game.
He hasn't touched it very often, but when they find a way to get it to him, either the alley-oop or a post feed, that time he just got away. Once again, snuck behind the defense, and when they realized he was behind her, it was too late. Iona has to make sure that Glover starts to get more touches. It doesn't have to result in him shooting it, but what it does, it puts pressure on the St. Peter's defense, and it may open it up for other guys.
Mike Glover is 7 of 9 from the field. The rest of his teammates are 7 for 30 from the field. So you're right, it's been far more efficiently done when it's gone inside to Mike Glover, who originally signed with Bobby Gonzalez to play at Seton Hall. Had an eligibility issue and ended up going to junior college before landing at Iona.
Yeah, you see how effective he is. But as I mentioned, it doesn't have to result in him shooting the ball if he gets the touch. It just creates the opportunity for others.
Rashawn Dwight just called for that foul for Iona. His second and the team's second here in the second half. So plenty of fouls to give still here for Iona. St. Peter's is over the limit. They've got 17 fouls. So the Gales shoot free throws the rest of the way. Leon slips one inside to Ryan Bacon. Bacon challenged up front and a takeaway. Glover went up, as did Dzubret. Fields slides inside, turned it over. Beelan with the steal. He gives it back. Saved by Fields. And a timeout call. Iona granted the timeout as Trinity Fields came up with the loose ball. A block at one end and a scramble at the other.
Let me take a look here. Now I'm wondering who called that timeout.
It might have been Tim Cluse from the sideline.
Yeah, I was just wondering, but if he thought his guy was going to slide out of bounds because of the avoidance of a tie-up, the arrow's pointing Iona's way. They didn't have to call that for that reason.
ESPN's the home court of championship week, Tuesday night on ESPN. Coverage continues with 2 more conference championship games. First at 7 Eastern, UConn awaits the winner of Notre Dame DePaul. That will be the Big East Women's Championship presented by American Eagle Outfitters. And then at 9 Eastern, it's Butler and Milwaukee in the Horizon League Championship game. Championship week continues tomorrow night, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. Jenkins can't get it to go. DeZoubre on the offensive glass. That's too strong. And Nick Leon has the rebound fall right in his hands.
Again, a point-blank opportunity missed by Iona, but they're starting to assert themselves. And you can see more bounce in their step on the defensive end. They see the clock ticking down, and them down 10.
Beelan from the corner. That hit the top of the backboard. Ended up in the hands of Conley. And an inadvertent whistle. Tough break for Iona. They were off to the races. But behind the play, there was an inadvertent whistle from Jim Haney.
He may have thought that it hit something else, maybe the score clock, which have been out of bounds, and Iona should have inbounded the ball instead of the fast break.
Machado lost it on the way up, but a foul call. That'll go against Darius Conley. That's his second.
Now with a 10-point lead and 5 minutes and 9 seconds left, you would think there's still plenty of time for Iona. But the way St. Peter's is playing defense, they may have to kick it up a notch. And that they're starting to do with Scott Machado starting to become more aggressive, more assertive.
Luis Machado is the C in Scott. Not sure he got stuck with the C. He must enjoy sitting in the middle of things.
And if he doesn't like that seat, they're going to have to change T-shirts.
Exactly. Only 1 of 2 at the line, but DeZoubre with a back tap. Run down by Glover.
That's what I mean by more intensity now.
Machado lowers his shoulder. Gets caught with a ball fake. Forces it up. The tap won't go. The scramble ends up with Steven Samuels. Over pursuit of the basketball, gives a lane to Steven Samuels. Beautifully executed by the Peacocks.
Patience. St. Peter's in their comfort zone when they're playing patient half court.
White slashes inside, the follow by Glover. And full court pressure after the made basket.
Remember when we talked to John Dunn earlier today, he said their focus was on Smythe, who's not in the ball game right now, and also on Machado, trying to keep him out of the paint. He knew that Glover was going to get his because he's such a mainstay in the middle. And he felt that his team could live with that, with Mike Glover getting his but shutting down the other 2. And that's been the story of the game right now for the most part.
Beelan drives it, swatted from behind. Off the knee of Beelan, out of bounds. Iona has the basketball when we come back. They beat St. Peter's head-to-head twice this season. But it's the Peacocks that might be 3:47 away from their first tournament since 1995. Well, Cindy, the winner of our game, joins this foursome already in the NCAA tournament. Asheville won the Big South. Belmont convincingly in the Atlantic Sun tournament. Morehead State with Kenneth Fareed, who will probably have a chance to be on the fringe of the lottery in the NBA draft. Also in the NCAA tournament. And Kyle Smythe, injured shoulder yesterday in the semifinals, re-injured in the first half of the MAAC championship game, on the sidelines right now watching his team, the Iona Gales, try to shoot their way back in it. Jamel Jenkins can't hit a 3, and a foul given in the backcourt. That will go against Scott Machado yesterday on a drive. Smythe injured the shoulder, and then he goes down to the deck in the first half of tonight's game and re-injures the shoulder.
Yeah, tried to give it that schoolboy try, but in the end, couldn't get back in the ballgame. And this is a guy who averages 10 points a game, but just as importantly, you need to account for him. That would put more pressure on the St. Peter's defense and also stretch the defense.
Great takeaway by Dwight, but he's blocked. What a recovery by Steven Samuels. Machado, he can't hit. Thielen's got the loose ball. Check that Bacon with the rebound. And he might have thrown an elbow that caught Glover.
Now this is going to be tricky because contact with an elbow should be just a common foul. Excessive contact, now we're getting in the range of intentional and possibly flagrant. I don't think, and that's caused by moving and swinging the elbows faster than the rest of the body. Take a look right here. I don't think it was an elbow. Didn't look like an elbow made contact from that angle. It was his head. Now, what do you do with that? Elbows are, part of the rule book. I don't know if your head is considered one of those dangerous weapons by comparison. Yep, it was the head.
I agree with you. I think that will probably be just kind of unfortunate incidental contact for Mike Glover. And Glover, by the way, was called for a foul. The initial call from Mike Kitts was a foul on Glover for the reach-in after Bacon grabbed the rebound. So
insult to injury.
That's a little salt in the wound potentially for Iona.
But going back to Kyle Smith again, he would be able to stretch the defense, at least from a standpoint of having to account for him. 39% from beyond the arc, hits him in bunches. And that's one of the things that St. Peter's game planned for, trying to take Smythe out of the game. Well, he's out of the game. They didn't have to worry about it, and their defense has been pretty effective when you take a look at the score, holding Iona to 40 points when they average almost 80, half of their season average, which by the time this game ends, I'd be surprised if Iona scored 52, 54 points.
Mike Kitts has the headset on. That's Brian Kersey, who was also giving his opinion. Brian Kersey, the son of longtime NBA official Jess Kersey.
NBA and ABA. I remember I was a rookie. Jess was a young official in the ABA, and we talked a lot during my career.
Well,
great guy.
You guys had time to chat because you were always climbing up the ladder. We get the explanation from Mike Kitts. And it is only a foul on Mike Glover. But I was going to say, you guys talked a lot. You had a lot of time for conversation as you're climbing up the ladder to take the ball out of the peach basket. So I understand where the conversation time would come.
No, Jess Kersey, an outstanding official throughout his years. And Brian is a chip off the block, one of the best in the game.
Reach-in foul called on DeZubre. Only the 15th foul on Iona, so still another foul to give for the Gales.
Yeah, we talked about Kyle Smythe again. 10 points is what he averaged on the season. 0 points tonight. Not a factor because of the injury. And again, it's really had an adverse impact on the Iona offensive attack.
Bacon leaves one inside for Thielen. The overly aggressive Iona defense again leaves the lane open to the basket. 17 for Jerron Thielen.
And again, no panic by St. Peter's in the face of that pressure. Calmly, patiently, wait for the open guy.
Foul called underneath, I believe, on Bacon. That should put Conley at the free throw line, or rather Glover at the free throw line.
Bacon just did a nice job, saw the double team. And what he did, a lot of guys don't do, in the face of the double team, he turned and faced it and challenged the double team. A lot of guys turn their back and they can never see what's going on.
Thielen had 17 against Loyola in the quarterfinals. 15 and 7 yesterday in the semifinal win over the top seed Fairfield, and now 17 in the championship game for a player that only averaged 11.5 points per game during the season.
And shooting near perfect 3 or 4 from beyond the arc when he normally averages about 24%.
Takeaway inside, flipping it up wildly was Dwight, and a foul call. So after Glover missed the second free throw, Iona keeps it alive. Ealing was called for the foul. His second, and ESPN, the home court of championship week, brings you at least a handful of games from the Big East Championship, presented by American Eagle Outfitters, starting at noon tomorrow. ESPN HD with the day session, and tomorrow night ESPNU HD brings you the night session at 7. Our ESPN networks will bring you every game of the Big East Championship, part of Championship Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods, and the entire Big East Championship also available on ESPN 3D.
Well, you look at that graphic right there with the buys and the double buys, and it really just shows you how important finishing in the top four might be.
Another takeaway. Dwight can't hit the layup. Wow. Steven Samuels with the rebound after Rashawn Dwight intercepted the entry pass and missed the layup.
Boy, that could have cut the lead to just 6, but here they come again with an opportunity to scramble.
How about the rejection inside? Ryan Bacon blocked by Machado. And that shot goes.
St. Peter's better stop looking at the scoreboard and start playing basketball. They're praying for that clock to drip away instead of staying aggressive. They're careless with the passes. And take nothing away from Iona now. They're desperate and they're gambling. But usually against a desperate gambling team, as we've seen St. Peter's do a couple of times. Right there.
The point guard goes up to throw it back.
Well, again, rising to the challenge. But you also got to criticize Baker for not going to the basket strong. He's a big kid. He can go hard.
Trinity Fields called for the foul in the backcourt. That's finally team foul number 7 on Iona. So it's now a 1-and-1 for St. Peter's. A St. Peter's team that's turned it over 4 times in the last 2 minutes. And they have barely been to the free throw line tonight as a team. Wesley Jenkins is 2 for 2 at the line, and those are the only 2 free throws that St. Peter's has shot so far in this game. And it'll be Jenkins going back to the line.
Yesterday against Fairfield, St. Peter's had a 25-point lead, allowed Fairfield to come back to within 6 before Fairfield ran out of gas. And you kind of wonder, you know, with this clock down under 2 minutes, is St. Peter's now starting to feel, you know, that energy drain? And more mental than physical right now.
A pair at the line for Jenkins. He's 4 for 4. Wide open in the corner, Armand. He still can't hit a 3. Offensive rebound, though, and the putback won't go for Glover. But he again draws the foul. So Mike Glover will go back to the free throw line.
And when Mike Glover rebounded that ball on the weak side, not a black shirt was there. You know, throughout this game, St. Peter's has done a pretty good job of moving their feet, getting the blockouts, you know, maintaining at least some control of the board. But in the last couple of minutes, Iona has really kind of stepped it up a little bit. And again, that's another characteristic of fatigue. When you can't get the board covered, you can't get to the blockouts.
Another miss by Glover at the free throw line. He's now 2 for 4. But he has been terrific again in this game. 18 points to lead Iona.
He's a 62% free throw shooter.
Seven-point game, 1:43 to go. The last time these two teams met in the championship game in the MAAC tournament, the 05-06 season. A steal, and Fields puts it up and in. St. Peter's will call their last timeout with the lead down to 5.
Not exactly what John Dunn envisioned when his team had a 13-point lead in the second half. That Iona would come back like this, but I'm sure he was prepared for it. The thing that I like about it, if you take a look, that to me, again, miscommunication, which is mental fatigue more than anything, threw it right to the Iona player. That wasn't a deflection, that was just throwing it away. As Nick Leon kind of suffered a little brain lock right there. The thing I like about John Dunn when he called that timeout, he was very calm, wasn't excited, wasn't berating his team, because sometimes that translates into panic at this point in time in the game. So he wants them to regather their composure. On the other hand, obviously, Tim Cluse and Iona very excited, very energized. He wants to keep that energy up to a high level.
It's the championship game of the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, better known here in the Northeast as the MAAC. Bob Wischusen and Len Elmore at Webster Bank Arena at Harbor Yard here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's St. Peter's and Iona. The 102nd meeting between these two teams. During the season, Iona dominated both of the regular season meetings. January 7th, they won at home by 18. And on February 25th, Iona won by 14 at St. Peter's at the Anatelli Center. Coming up next, Championship Week continues with the Southern Conference Championship. College of Charleston takes on Wofford. So stay tuned for that. We still have 1 minute and 40 seconds of what might be adventure in the backcourt for St. Peter's, because that's what the last 2.5 minutes has been. Now they get it into Nick Leon. Trapped in the corner. No timeouts for St. Peter's.
Wrong corner to be trapped in. Oh.
Somehow they escape. And it caroms to Beelan.
Looking to try to avoid the foul. As Iona now backs away. It looked as though they were going to foul, but Tim Cluse called them off.
Shot clock to 10. Jenkins with the jump stop. Whoa! Left-handed shot somehow goes down for Wesley Jenkins, and a chance for a three-point play.
What a break for St. Peter's, and tough luck for Iona. Tim Cluse called his guys off. They were going to foul to extend the game. Shot clock got to 10 and under. He figured, okay, let's play the possession. And what was maybe a 2-point opportunity from the free throw line turns into a 3-point play. What a shot. And you talk about these guys all know each other and played in the AAU circuit and the playgrounds, etc. I bet you Wesley Jenkins never put one of those up like that in any of those games.
Wow. He's the only player that has shot free throws in this game for St. Peter's, and he's 5 for 5. Machado on the drive. That won't go. The tip follow won't go. Another try inside by Glover. That's blocked. And finally, Glover is fouled, and he'll go to the line as Beelan picks up his 4th.
That's a guy that will not quit. You know, we were told, Tim Cluse told us about his competitiveness, and that was a total demonstration of it. Gets to the board and continues to play volleyball using that big body. I think Glover makes this a 2-possession game. You'll see Iona dig in and play defense and not try to extend this game, but hope they can create a turnover.
Double-double, number 18 on the season for Mike Glover.
2-possession ball game. I think Iona can afford if they can make the stop here.
Into Jenkins. Jenkins gets it across the timeline, gets tied up, turns it over. Timeout call. Iona with 1 timeout left, but now they've got the basketball.
Unbelievable hustle. He just ran the ball handler down.
56.8 seconds to go in the MAAC championship game, and it is not over yet. Iona has the basketball. And let's go back and check in with Cindy Brunson. All right, Cindy, thanks very much. Well, we still have just under 57, what could be very eventful seconds left in the MAAC championship game. Bob Wischusen and Len Elmore. And Len, normally when a game is this low scoring, A 6-point lead seems like the biggest lead in the world, but based on the fact that St. Peter's can't get the ball across the timeline without it being an adventure, doesn't feel like it's that much.
Well, this game has become an adventure. 13-point lead just dissipated very quickly.
Machado lost it. Glover found it, and he scores again. Timeout called by Tim Kluse. That's Iona's last timeout.
Again, John Dunn trying to remain calm, but emphasizing the need to be under control and to play smart, exercise good judgment.
Time and score as well. Down 6, under a minute to go. More often than not, you would think the percentage play would probably be that you'd have to try a 3-point shot, but with St. Peter's unable to get the ball inbounds, I guess going for 2 here might be the higher percentage play.
Well, I think regardless, it's the higher percentage play because you got plenty of time. Going for the quick 2, the opposition, the defense is low to foul you because if they do, now you got an opportunity to put points on the board with no time elapsing. So you go for the quick 2. Eventually, you'll have to take a 3 if the other guy is scoring. But right now, you keep the pressure on him by scoring. And the fact, as you mentioned, that St. Peter's can't get the ball in play makes it even greater an advantage.
Both teams are now out of timeouts. St. Peter's will win this game if they can find a way to get the ball in and get it across the timeline. Again, a deep diagonal pass results in a turnover. 4-point game. Here comes Machado. Outside for 3, Fields. That's off the mark. Offensive rebound. Kept alive for the moment by Dwight. It's taken away by Nick Leon. And a foul call.
Two things at play here. First, we'll go back to the question we discussed early. Would you rather have the good defense or the solid offense? And right now, defense is what matters. If St. Peter's could get the ball in bounds, it would help. But right now, here they are at critical time, being able to challenge a shot. Now watch. Dwight gets it, he puts it on the floor, and that allows Nick Leon, the diminutive Nick Leon, to get down and take it away from him.
9 team fouls on Iona. So this is still a 1-and-1 for Nick Leon, but he shoots 84%. And he's got the front end.
You like that rotation.
Just after the foul was given, if you could read John Dunn's lips to his team on the sideline, he said, guys, it doesn't have to be pretty. Get your heads up. 2 at the line for Leon. 6-point game, 27 seconds to go. And now you probably have to think about 3-pointers if you're Iona.
Yeah, that's what they're doing right now. Though Machado, again, going to the basket. And this is the problem. You can't foul him. You can't foul him. 2-possession ball game with 22 seconds left. Why do you foul?
I think that's the point their head coach was trying to make as well.
But that's why I say, even in this situation, 2-possession game, still go for the quick 2 because you're going to get an opportunity to score points. A high percentage opportunity to score points.
Machado only shoots 67% at the line.
Now you got to be careful. St. Peter's, you got a guy raising his arm on the lane, and Leon behind Machado waving his arms like he was flying. You know, there is a rule about disconcerting the free throw shooter. So if he would have missed, he might get an extra shot. So they got to be careful.
Machado hits both. And again, a chance for Iona to set up the press. The foul now given, though, by DeZubre. I think Tim Kluse was looking for a trap rather than the immediate foul.
But the ball was in the middle of the floor, so it's difficult to trap there. And I know he probably wanted the ball to be guided towards at least for one trap opportunity, but I think it's a good idea. If you're going to extend the game, you got to do it right now.
St. Peter's is 7 for 7 at the line. Jenkins at the free throw line. He's 5 for 5 now. He's 6 for 6.
And now, Bob, back to your point. Now you got to look for threes if you're Iona.
Charleston and Wofford will play for the Southern Conference Championship next year on ESPN2.
Because it's a two-possession game right now, and within 20 seconds, you're not sure if you're Iona, you're going to get two possessions if you don't foul.
Back to a 6-point lead. Machado able to wait for the ball to cross the timeline before he picks it up, and he hits a three! With no pressure coming from St. Peter's, that only took a couple of ticks off the clock. Now Jenkins has it poked away, but a foul call. Rashawn Dwight thought that he had a clean knock of the ball away.
Wow. That's what he's saying to himself. All ball, man. But right, this is the way you draw it up. Quick hitter, opportunity to get a three, and with no times out, either team, no way to stop the clock. You got to get the ball in bounds quickly.
And the ball was able to roll 60 feet up the court before Machado was forced to pick it up because no one from St. Peter's came to provide any pressure. Two-possession game once again, though, as again it's Jenkins that hits at the free throw line.
Yeah, I think that St. Peter's is going to rethink that strategy on the last inbounds play. They've got to stay up now, force Iona to scramble. There you see it.
Now Machado has to catch it deep, and the clock starts.
Nice step out on the high screen.
Armand can't hit. Running back to the line is Dwight. He'll try to three. That hits the top of the backboard. 2 seconds to go. St. Peter's is going to the NCAA tournament.